Bernie Madoff was a Wall Street legend. He was revered as a genius, a financial wizard who could consistently deliver impressive returns, no matter the market conditions. For decades, his investment firm enjoyed an aura of exclusivity and success, attracting a diverse clientele of wealthy individuals, charitable foundations, and institutional investors. Madoff's reputation was built on a foundation of trust, cultivated through his charisma, connections, and the steady stream of returns he provided. However, behind this facade of prosperity lay a dark secret, a truth so audacious and devastating that it would send shockwaves through the global financial system. Madoff's empire was not built on astute investment strategies, but on a carefully constructed lie, a Ponzi scheme of staggering proportions. It was a house of cards, destined to collapse, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and a legacy of betrayal. For years, Madoff had been fabricating trading records, forging account statements, and siphoning off billions of dollars from unsuspecting investors. He used funds from new investors to pay off older ones, creating an illusion of profit that masked the underlying fraud. This elaborate charade, fueled by greed and deception, went undetected for years, highlighting the vulnerabilities of a system built on trust and the devastating consequences of unchecked financial power. The Madoff scandal stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of financial systems and the human cost of unchecked greed. Bernie Madoff's journey to becoming the mastermind behind one of the largest financial frauds in history was a gradual one, marked by ambition, cunning, and a willingness to exploit the weaknesses of the system. His career in finance began in the 1960s, a period of significant growth and transformation in the securities industry.
Madoff started small, trading penny stocks and providing brokerage services, gradually building his reputation and expanding his network.
By the 1980s, Madoff had established himself as a prominent figure on Wall Street. His firm, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC, was known for its market-making activities, facilitating trades between buyers and sellers of stocks. Madoff's reputation as a skilled trader and his firm's technological sophistication earned him respect and admiration within the industry. This aura of success and exclusivity attracted a wide range of clients, eager to entrust their wealth to his seemingly Midas touch. What many didn't realize was that Madoff's legitimate business was merely a front for a much darker operation. Behind the scenes, he was orchestrating a massive Ponzi scheme, luring investors with the promise of consistent, above-market returns. He cultivated an air of mystery around his investment strategy, claiming it was too complex for outsiders to understand. This aura of secrecy, coupled with his impeccable reputation, effectively silenced any potential doubts or suspicions. Madoff's fraudulent empire was built on a foundation of deception, carefully constructed over decades. He preyed on the trust of his clients, many of whom were personal friends, charitable organizations, and institutions that believed in his integrity and financial acumen. The scale of his deception was staggering, involving billions of dollars and a complex web of fabricated transactions, forged documents, and fictitious accounts. A Ponzi scheme, named after Charles Ponzi, who gained notoriety for his fraudulent investment operations in the 1920s, is a type of financial fraud that relies on deception and the continuous inflow of new investors to sustain itself. It is characterized by the promise of high returns with little to no risk, an alluring proposition that often attracts unsuspecting individuals seeking quick and easy profits. However, the underlying reality is far more sinister.
The mechanics of a Ponzi scheme are deceptively simple. Instead of generating actual profits through legitimate investments, the scheme's operator, like Madoff, uses funds from new investors to pay returns to existing investors. This creates an illusion of profitability, leading investors to believe that their investments are thriving.
The key to sustaining the scheme lies in continually attracting new investors, whose funds are used to keep the cycle of payments flowing. As the scheme progresses, the operator must constantly recruit more investors to meet the growing demand for returns. The pressure to maintain the facade of profitability intensifies, leading to increasingly aggressive recruitment tactics and ever larger sums of money being funneled into the scheme. However, the fundamental flaw of a Ponzi scheme is that it is unsustainable. It relies on a constant influx of new capital, and eventually, the flow of new investors dwindles, leading to its inevitable collapse. When the scheme unravels, the consequences are devastating. leaving investors with significant financial losses and a profound sense of betrayal. Bernie Madoff's success in perpetrating his Ponzi scheme for so long can be attributed to a combination of factors, including his carefully cultivated image, his ability to exploit social connections, and the aura of exclusivity he built around his investment firm.
Madoff targeted a specific clientele: wealthy individuals, charitable foundations, and institutional investors who were often less sophisticated in their understanding of financial markets and more trusting of his reputation and track record.
Madoff's strategy relied heavily on word-of-mouth marketing. He cultivated relationships with influential individuals within various social circles, including prominent Jewish communities, exclusive country clubs, and philanthropic organizations. These individuals, impressed by his apparent success and reassured by his personal connections, became unwitting spokespeople for his scheme, recommending his services to their friends, family, and colleagues. Furthermore, Madoff deliberately fostered an aura of exclusivity around his firm. He maintained a relatively small client base, creating the impression that his services were highly sought after and only available to a select few. This tactic played on investors' desire to be part of an exclusive club, further enhancing the allure of his scheme. He also discouraged investors from withdrawing their funds frequently, claiming it would disrupt his investment strategy, effectively preventing them from scrutinizing their accounts and potentially discovering the fraud. Through these calculated tactics, Madoff was able to create an environment of trust and exclusivity, effectively silencing any potential doubts or suspicions. His victims, lulled into a false sense of security by his reputation, connections, and consistent returns, remained oblivious to the true nature of his operation for years. While Madoff's Ponzi scheme flourished for years, hidden beneath the surface were cracks in the facade, subtle signs that something was amiss. Despite his claims of consistent returns, independent analysts and financial experts had long expressed skepticism about Madoff's investment strategy. His reported returns seemed too good to be true, consistently outperforming the market without any discernible fluctuations. A statistical anomaly that raised red flags among those who scrutinized his operations.
Several individuals, including Harry Markopolos, a portfolio manager who had been investigating Madoff's activities for years, attempted to alert authorities to the potential fraud. Markopolos, through meticulous analysis and mathematical modeling, concluded that Madoff's returns were statistically impossible and indicative of a Ponzi scheme. He submitted his findings to the Securities and Exchange Commission multiple times, but his warnings went largely unheeded.
The SEC, despite receiving multiple tips and warnings about Madoff's activities, failed to conduct a thorough investigation. The agency's lack of action can be attributed to a combination of factors, including regulatory loopholes, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and a general lack of understanding of the complexities of Madoff's purported investment strategy. This failure to act effectively allowed Madoff to continue his scheme unabated, further solidifying his reputation and emboldening his deception.
As the years went by, the pressure to sustain the scheme mounted. The global financial crisis of 2008 proved to be a turning point. As markets plummeted and investors panicked, redemption requests for Madoff's fund surged. Faced with a liquidity crisis, Madoff could no longer maintain the illusion of profitability. The house of cards he had so carefully constructed was about to come crashing down.
The unraveling of Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme began in late 2008, triggered by the global financial crisis and a surge in redemption requests from panicked investors. Unable to meet the demand for withdrawals, Madoff confessed his crimes to his sons, Mark and Andrew, who immediately reported their father to the authorities.
On December 11, 2008, Madoff was arrested by the FBI, marking the beginning of the end for his decades-long deception. The news of Madoff's arrest sent shockwaves through the financial world.
The scale of his fraud, estimated at $65 billion, was staggering, making it the largest financial scandal in U.S. history. Investors, many of whom had trusted Madoff with their life savings, were devastated, left to grapple with the realization that their investments had vanished into thin air. The fallout from the scandal was immediate and far-reaching, impacting individuals, charities, and institutions worldwide. The legal proceedings against Madoff moved swiftly. He pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, money laundering, and perjury. In June 2009, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison, a symbolic punishment reflecting the enormity of his crimes and the lasting impact of his deception. The court-appointed trustee tasked with recovering assets for Madoff's victims has since recovered billions of dollars, but many investors remain significantly out of pocket. Madoff's downfall exposed the vulnerabilities of a financial system built on trust and the ease with which a sophisticated con artist could exploit regulatory loopholes for personal gain. His case served as a wake-up call, prompting calls for greater transparency, stronger regulatory oversight, and increased investor education to prevent similar schemes from occurring in the future. The Bernie Madoff scandal was not merely a financial crime. It was a human tragedy, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and untold suffering. Thousands of investors, ranging from individuals who had entrusted their life savings to Madoff to charitable foundations and universities that had invested their endowments, lost billions of dollars.
The financial losses were just the tip of the iceberg. The emotional toll of Madoff's betrayal was immeasurable. Many investors were forced to confront the devastating consequences of their losses. Retirements were postponed, dreams were shattered, and families were torn apart as the financial security they had worked so hard to build crumbled before their eyes. Some victims, overwhelmed by the emotional and financial burden, took their own lives, unable to cope with the devastating reality of Madoff's deception.
Among the victims were individuals like Cheryl Weinstein, a retired schoolteacher who lost her entire life savings, and Elie Wiesel, a Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor whose foundation was defrauded of millions of dollars. These stories, and countless others like them, paint a heartbreaking picture of the human cost of Madoff's greed and the devastating ripple effects of his crimes. The Madoff scandal stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the profound impact of financial crimes on the lives of ordinary people. It underscores the importance of vigilance, critical thinking, and a healthy skepticism toward investment opportunities that seem too good to be true. The legacy of Madoff's scheme will forever be etched in the minds of those who lost everything, a testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and the enduring power of deception. The Bernie Madoff scandal exposed significant weaknesses in the regulatory framework of the financial industry. It highlighted the limitations of existing regulations, the lack of adequate oversight, and the ease with which a sophisticated con artist could exploit the system for personal gain. The scandal prompted a wave of reforms aimed at strengthening investor protections, enhancing regulatory oversight, and preventing similar schemes from occurring in the future.
In response to the Madoff scandal, the US Congress passed the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act in 2010. This landmark legislation introduced sweeping changes to the financial regulatory system, including the creation of the Financial Stability Oversight Council to monitor systemic risk, the establishment of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to protect consumers from predatory lending practices, and the implementation of stricter regulations for hedge funds and other investment vehicles.
The Madoff scandal also led to significant changes within the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. The agency faced intense scrutiny and criticism for its failure to detect Madoff's scheme despite numerous red flags and warnings from whistleblowers. In response, the SEC implemented internal reforms aimed at improving its investigative capabilities, enhancing its risk assessment procedures, and strengthening its enforcement efforts. The lessons learned from the Madoff scandal extend beyond regulatory reforms. It underscored the importance of investor education and due diligence. Investors must be aware of the risks associated with various investment products, conduct thorough research, and seek independent advice before entrusting their money to any financial advisor. The scandal also highlighted the need for greater transparency and accountability within the financial industry to restore public trust and prevent future abuses. The Bernie Madoff scandal remains one of the most infamous financial crimes in history. It stands as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked greed, the fragility of trust, and the human toll of financial deception. Madoff's elaborate Ponzi scheme, built on a foundation of lies and fueled by a culture of impunity, shattered the lives of thousands of investors, leaving behind a legacy of betrayal and disillusionment. The scandal exposed systemic weaknesses in the financial regulatory framework, prompting significant reforms aimed at strengthening investor protections and enhancing oversight of the industry. The Dodd-Frank Act, passed in the wake of the crisis, introduced sweeping changes to the regulatory landscape, aiming to prevent similar schemes from occurring in the future. Despite the regulatory reforms and increased awareness, the lessons learned from the Madoff scandal remain relevant today. The allure of quick riches and the willingness to trust charismatic figures with promises of high returns persist. Investors must remain vigilant, exercise due diligence, and approach investment opportunities with a healthy dose of skepticism, remembering the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and blind trust. The Bernie Madoff scandal serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most sophisticated and seemingly trustworthy individuals can be capable of perpetrating elaborate frauds. It underscores the importance of ethical behavior, transparency, and accountability within the financial industry to maintain public trust and ensure the stability of the global financial system. The legacy of Madoff's betrayal will continue to serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and the enduring human cost of financial crimes.